Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has stated that he may invoke the Insurrection Act to legitimize his deployment of National Guard troops to major American cities. The US government shutdown continues for a seventh straight day as yet more bids to resolve the shutdown fail at the Senate. President Trump has said that there will be layoffs if the shutdown is not solved soon. After a successful first day of negotiation in Egypt's Sharm-El Sheikh, Israel and Hamas representatives will sit with mediators for a second day of talks today. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul has stated that it is all up to Hamas now and has demanded that the first phase of Trump's plan be implemented this week. Swedish activist Greta Thunberg has arrived in Greece and addressed a press conference where she slammed Western governments, stating that they failed to do their part in helping Gaza. US House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has stated that there is radio silence from the White House as the government shutdown continues. Memorials and vigils have been organized in Israel and across the world, marking 2 years since the deadly October 7 terrorist attack that kicked off hostilities between Hamas and Israel. Well, viewers, those are the headlines in our top focus. US President Donald Trump has stated that he was happy to work with Democrats on healthcare policy, a key sticking point in the attempts to reopen the government. But the shutdown must end first, is what he has emphasized. Trump has also stated that he would be open to making a deal on subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, which Democrats are demanding in order to break an impasse with Republican lawmakers over the U.S. government shutdown. Let's in fact listen into what Trump had to say.
It could, at some point it will, and the Democrats are the ones that started this, and if you think about it, it's about health care to a large extent. It's about, we want great health care for people. We don't want to give the money away to other people that come pouring into our country, and they've already poured because nobody's coming into our country. Now we have the border totally stopped. In fact, numbers we just announced again, we're at another zero. So we have zero for 4 months in a row. Zero people coming into our country illegally. That's a pretty good number. I'm not sure even I can believe that, Doug, if you want to know the truth. Zero. We went from millions of people to zero, but it's pretty close to that number. And the way you stop them is not to give away, not to announce that you're giving everybody free health care, free this and that. But what that does is it affects the American people, because the American people are unable to get good health care. Obamacare has been a wreck, as you know, and to do that, we have to keep it propped up and do the best you can with it. It's a mess.
The White House has backed Trump's assertion that U.S. government employees were being laid off right now due to the shutdown. They've also warned that job losses could result if Congress does not restore federal funding. Meanwhile, U.S. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has stated that the White House has gone radio silent since the Democrats' last meeting with President Trump on the federal government shutdown. Listen in to what Jeffries had to say.
Well, the White House has gone radio silent since the Oval Office meeting last Monday, and neither Leader Schumer or myself have heard a word from the administration about resolving this issue, making clear to us that the White House wanted to shut the government down, to continue the chaos that they've been inflicting on the American people since day one of this presidency.
With us on the broadcast is Mr. Spencer Critchley, communications strategist and political analyst, joining us from California. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, this political blame game between the Democrats and Republicans is only escalating as the shutdown is now in its seventh day, impacting people, furloughing the federal employees. Some might even be laid off. In your assessment, how long will this continue? Because it does not seem like either party is willing to back off.
Well, first of all, I want to push back respectfully on this phrase blame game, which is often used, and understandably based on past history with normal politics in the United States, when you would often observe both parties engaging in a blame game as they jockeyed for position. But I think we're looking at something very different now. We no longer have two parties who are practicing normal democratic politics. We have one party which has decided to, I was going to say abandon democracy, but that doesn't really do full justice to what they're doing. They are attacking and dismantling democracy, and they cannot be trusted as any kind of good faith negotiating partner. So this is not just normal political rhetoric with two normal parties jockeying for position. The Republican Party has demonstrated, unfortunately, under President Trump, that it cannot be trusted. In the clip you just played of President Trump, everything he said was a lie. The lie, for example, that somehow illegal immigrants are being given free health care. This is a lie. The lie that Obamacare is a disaster, or whatever the word he used was, that was a lie. And you can tell, by the way, one of his signals of his lies is when he says, "as you know." That's a signal that he's lying at that moment. The trouble is, though, that even to dispute those lies is to over-dignify them. The problem that looms over any individual lie, any individual policy dispute, is that Donald Trump lies about everything, that he has no good faith intention to try to govern on behalf of the American people. He's only interested in accruing power for himself. And that is the super issue that outweighs all the other issues. As far as how long this shutdown could continue, I hope the Democrats have found their nerve and will hang on as long as it takes, because they need to realize they do not have a negotiating partner. They cannot trust that the Republicans will negotiate on any of these issues, just like they haven't so far. And people's lives are at stake with this health care issue. So I hope the Democrats stand firm as long as it takes. And I think actually the Trump administration will back down if they do.
And so a quick follow-up to that, if the deadlock does continue, how will this impact the average American and the American economy at large? Because we're seeing inflation, we're also seeing, and experts are also warning that a recession is looming large due to the tariff policies that Trump has been imposing on other countries in particular. What sort of impact would we see in the long run?
Well, normally a government shutdown, and there again we're referring to normally, but these are no longer normal times. But in the past, normally a government shutdown would cause some short-term pain, but the economy would recover from it fairly quickly, and normally these shutdowns would not last very long. The problem here is that even if Democrats were to fold, and again I hope they don't, but if they were, the American people would still be facing the disastrous impacts of Trump's healthcare policy, which would see their insurance premiums doubling or more. And we're talking about enormous amounts of money for ordinary working people. People who might make, say, $60,000 or $70,000 in the US, which is a very middle income salary, would find themselves paying $20,000 or more just for health insurance, which is ruinous. Then there's the impact, as you mentioned, of the tariffs. There's the slash and burn policy towards eliminating government positions, which will happen anyway, whether there's a shutdown or not. All of this is going to add up to increasing economic pain for the United States, and actually also significantly weaker security for the United States as Trump diverts military resources, for example, to trying to police his own citizens, and as he grievously damages America's alliances and reputation around the world.
And a quick follow-up to what you just stated. In your assessment, will this then be a wake-up call for Trump's MAGA base, which is often the middle class in the rural areas?
I think we're starting to see that. His support has never been particularly high, although it's been very solid amongst his base, as you note. But we're starting to see his already weak numbers declining and starting to cut into his base. Most importantly, he's losing independent voters. the small block of voters who tend to decide U.S. presidential elections these days, which are usually determined by small margins, which can be made up entirely of independent voters, is enough to make up those margins. But we're starting even to see members of his base, for example, farmers, who are suffering terribly. Soybean farmers, notably, last year sold $12 billion worth of soybeans to China. This year, they're selling $0 worth of soybeans to China. And they're starting to wonder, how is it that this man they thought was their friend and ally is doing such damaging things to them, to the point that many of them are looking at bankruptcy in the coming year unless they get a bailout, such as the bailout they had to get during the first Trump administration to the tune of tens of billions of dollars.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other crucial updates from the United States. Breaking news coming in, a medvac helicopter crashed onto a highway in U.S. in East Sacramento. Now, according to the Sacramento Fire Department, the aircraft went down on the eastbound side of Highway 50 near Howe Avenue. Authorities are investigating the crash and first responders are on the spot. Traffic has been completely shut down in the area as emergency crews are swarming the scene. Images on social media showcase a red helicopter operated by Reach Air Medical Services upside down in middle of the highway. Multiple people are reportedly injured as the aircraft crashed over a vehicle. Sacramento Mayor Kevin McCarthy has stated that survivors are being treated at local hospitals. More news coming in. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that he would invoke the Insurrection Act if necessary to deal with civil unrest in cities such as Portland or Chicago. Now, speaking to reporters, he stressed that he would act if people were being killed or if local officials blocked federal actions. Listen in.
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe. And it's turning out, and we started with D.C. It's been so successful.
President Trump has ordered 300 members of the Illinois National Guard into service to protect immigration and customs enforcement personnel and other federal employees. The move has prompted a legal challenge from the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago, which accused the Trump administration of unconstitutional invasion. Governor J.B. Pritzker claimed that President Trump's plan has all along been to cause chaos and consolidate power. Listen in.
I refuse to let Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and Gregory Bovino continue on this march toward autocracy. Their plan all along has been to cause chaos, and then they can use that chaos to consolidate Donald Trump's power. They think they can fool us all into thinking that the way to get out of this crisis that they created is to give them free rein. Well, that plan will only work if we let it. The state of Illinois is going to use every lever at our disposal to resist this power grab and get Noem's thugs the hell out of Chicago. I'm not afraid. I am not afraid, and I won't back down.
Earlier, a federal judge in Oregon temporarily blocked the deployment of National Guard troops to police Portland, a decision that the White House has stated it will appeal. In fresh developments, Texas Governor Greg Abbott also announced that he is approving the deployment of the Texas National Guard to other states to help enforce federal immigration laws, aligning with President Trump's immigration crackdown. Take a look.
Now we have these local states that are refusing to enforce the law, and we have chaos. Know this, and that is the president has the constitutional responsibility to enforce the laws of the United States, and those laws include the immigration laws. And the president has the authority to call up National Guard to assist in enforcing those laws. And that's exactly what the president is doing, and what Texas is doing. We're assisting the president in that cause. I want you to know, just moments ago, our National Guard, our elite National Guard in the state of Texas, began their deployment as they were loading on planes in Texas, boarding for flights to parts of the country where they will be able to safeguard ICE officials and other federal officials as they try to enforce the laws of the United States. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt defended President Trump's actions, arguing that troops were needed to protect federal employees from quote-unquote violent riots. She's also confirmed that the White House Budget Office is working with federal agencies on plans to lay off workers amid the government shutdown. Take a look.
With all due respect to that judge, I think her opinion is untethered in reality and in the law. The president is using his authority as Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Code 12406, which clearly states that the president has the right to call up the National Guard in cases where he deems it's appropriate. And if you look at what has happened in Portland, Oregon, for more than 100 nights, I was talking to our law enforcement team about it this morning, for more than 100 days, night after night after night, the ICE facility has been really under siege by these anarchists outside. They have been disrespecting law enforcement. They've been inciting violence. We saw, again, a guillotine rolled out in front of this federal building. And so the president wants to ensure that our federal buildings and our assets are protected. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. And ultimately, in the case in Los Angeles, that judge ruled in the Ninth Circuit, that panel of judges ruled that those troops could remain and that the president was well within his authority to do so. So we are appealing that decision. As you know, we expect a hearing on it pretty quickly, and we're very confident in the president's legal authority to do this, and we're very confident we will win on the merits of the law. And then, of course, the Office of Management and Budget is continuing to work with agencies on who, unfortunately, is going to have to be laid off if this shutdown continues.
Meanwhile, protests have erupted across several U.S. cities against immigration and customs enforcement raids, with residents now disrupting operations in New York, Washington and Chicago. In Rochester and New York, demonstrators forced ICE agents to leave without completing an arrest. Meanwhile, in Washington's neighborhoods, residents blocked detentions and secured the release of at least one man. Chicago, meanwhile, has seen some of the largest showdowns where protesters clashed with federal agents amid reports of heavy tactical presence and a shooting incident involving Border Patrol. Illinois and Chicago have, in the meantime, filed lawsuits to block President Donald Trump's move to federalize hundreds of National Guard troops to support the operations. In fact, let's take a look at what a few protesters have had to say.
Oregon doesn't need that here. We don't need more military. We're already being tear gassed. We're already being tear gassed by these guys that are local ICE agents or whatever. This Department of Homeland Security here is already tear gassing 2 blocks. So I don't think that extra armed forces where we have a military circus and show against peaceful demonstrators and protesters and honestly, all of these are just civilians. These are just civilians in American towns. Like, we're just out here as families. There's like skateboarders and teenagers and older people, and I'm glad there's no babies because they've been tear gassing.
I think of ICE is the President Trump way of cleaning up and, you know, giving the citizens, that the people that's here that want to be here, a chance to get in because they got so much connection, they throwing us away. You know, we take us forever just to get one thing, and they just get everything. That's what I feel, but some of them are nice because they live in our area.
So what I think that is terrible, I've been here like 5 months. I'm new in this city. I love the country, I love the city, I love the Chicago style, but I think that Trump is not a good decision because I've been learning the history of the country, and I know that the Chicago is like an immigrant city, born like that. So it's something contradictory to send or make propaganda about the immigrants are bad or they are destroying our country. So it's a little ridiculous.
Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Spencer Critchley. We've heard what some of the protesters have had to say. They've been out on the streets protesting against the raids that the ICE is doing. We've also seen some very disturbing visuals of these agents pepper spraying a lot of these protesters while they're just standing in front of them. Now, Donald Trump has stated that he's considering invoking the Insurrection Act, but earlier the Trump administration's point of view was that they're deploying the National Guard troops to simply deal with crime. Is what Trump is considering justified in this case, or is this an overreach?
No, absolutely not. This Governor Pritzker of Illinois is correct. This is an attempted authoritarian takeover of the United States by a would-be dictator. And he's following the pattern that dictators have followed over and over again. And that includes creating phony emergencies to justify emergency powers and deploying military force against the citizens of your own country, not for their safety, but to control them and to establish absolute authoritarian control over the country. President Trump has converted Immigration and Customs Enforcement into a private army. He's tripled its budget. It now has a budget larger than the militaries of many mid-sized nations around the world. He's redirecting FBI and other resources towards immigration enforcement, taking them away from vital functions such as counterterrorism. All of this is part of his attempted authoritarian takeover, and we must not take our eye off that ball. Something that people in other countries might not fully appreciate about American law enforcement, by the way, is when people are peacefully protesting in the United States, it's the job of the local police to keep those protesters safe, just as it's their job to keep everybody else's safe, because people peacefully protesting in the United States are exercising one of their most fundamental rights as Americans. So no matter how much you may disagree with what they're saying or whether you agree with them, that right must be protected. I've got quite a lot of experience working with law enforcement agencies, and I can tell you that the good ones understand that, and their first response to a protest is to make sure they're working out how to keep the protesters safe along with the rest of the community.
All right, sir, with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your perspective, and of course, sharing a little more about what exactly is going on the ground in the United States of America as far as the government shutdown and these protests are considered. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus towards Venezuela. We're now learning that in Caracas, hundreds have marched to the UN office demanding respect for Venezuela's sovereignty and peace amid rising tensions with the United States. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has stated that his government warned Washington about plans by a local extremist terrorist group to place an explosive device at the U.S. Embassy in Caracas, and that security around the diplomatic mission had been reinforced. The Venezuelan president described the plot as a typical false flag operation designed to provoke a scandal and blame his government, potentially triggering an escalation or confrontation. This statement comes amid a strong U.S. military deployment in the Caribbean, which is focused on combating drug trafficking, while the Venezuelan government, meanwhile, claims that it's an operation aimed at removing Maduro from power. Listen in to what Maduro had to say.
Una fuente de carácter nacional y una fuente de carácter internacional que se le hizo seguimiento y coincidió con la posibilidad de que un grupo terrorista extremista local colocara una carga explosiva contra la embajada de Estados Unidos en Caracas.
More news coming in. We're now learning that U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that he was pretty sure a Gaza peace deal was possible and has added that Hamas is agreeing to very important issues such as talks with Israel, which have commenced. Trump has expressed optimism regarding the deal's prospects as delegations from Hamas and Israel initiated indirect talks in Egypt to end the war under his 20-point plan. Listen in to what Trump had to say.
I think we're going to have it soon. I think we're going to have a deal. It's a hard thing for me to say that when for years and years they've been trying to have a deal with Gaza. But, literally for centuries, okay, if you really think about it. But we're going to have a Gaza deal, I'm pretty sure, yeah, and there's progress. And yeah, the people of Israel wanted to happen, but the people related to hostages, I mean, you see in Israel tens of thousands of people. They really want the hostages back, and they really want things to end. And I think Hamas now has been, all I can say is they've been fine. They've been fine. I hope it's going to continue that way. I think it will. I really think we're going to have a deal. We have a really good chance of making.
White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt has also stated that the Trump administration is working hard to advance as quickly as possible on the proposed plan to end the conflict in Gaza, with technical discussions underway. Listen in.
Yes, there are technical talks happening right now in Egypt amongst Special Envoy Witkoff and Mr. Kushner, as well as their respective parties from all sides. What we saw take place on Friday, and I have not commented on that from the podium yet, is truly remarkable. You've seen all sides of this conflict agree that this war needs to end, and agree to the 20-point framework that President Trump proposed. It's an incredible achievement, and the administration is working very hard to move the ball forward as quickly as we can. The president wants to see a ceasefire. He wants to see the hostages released, and the technical teams are discussing that as we speak to ensure that the environment is perfect to release those hostages. They're going over the lists of both the Israeli hostages and also the political prisoners who will be released, and those talks are underway, and the president is very much on the ball and is being apprised of this situation.
Meanwhile, Swedish activist Greta Thunberg arrived in Greece to a cheering pro-Palestinian crowd after she and hundreds of other activists captured by Israel were deported following an attempt to bring aid to Gaza. Now, speaking in Athens, she accused the Israeli government about failing to ensure human rights and the bare minimum in ensuring the safety for the Gaza aid mission. Listen in.
Let me be very clear. There is a genocide going on in front of our very eyes. A live-streamed genocide on all of our phones. No one has the privilege to say we are not aware of what is happening. No one in the future will be able to say we did not know. Under international law, states have a legal obligation to act to prevent and to stop a genocide from happening. That means ending complicity, applying real pressure, and ending arms transfers. We are not seeing that. We are not even seeing the bare minimum from our governments. This genocide and other genocides are being enabled and fueled by our own governments, our institutions, our media and companies. It is our responsibility to end that complicity. And I also...
With us on the broadcast is Daniel Boardman, senior correspondent for the National Telegraph, joining us from Toronto in Canada. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. These talks are taking place between Hamas and Israel in Egypt. We do know that Egypt and Qatar are both putting a lot of pressure on Hamas to ensure that the deal moves forward. Trump has expressed optimism that we're likely to see the first phase being implemented by the end of this week. In your assessment, are we witnessing a genuine breakthrough taking place?
Maybe. And people have to, I mean, this is where the Trump administration is very good and sometimes has its flaws. Their heterodox thinking is much more conducive to peace in the Middle East. You saw the Abraham Accords in the first time, then all the Western technocrats for the last 70 years who have not understood the motivations of Gaza, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the rest. Now, the big disconnect that has always been the obstacle to peace here is that the Hamas representatives and the Hamas and the Gazans in Gaza are two vastly different parties, right? So Hamas leaders who have been in five-star hotels in Qatar and in Egypt and in Turkey have no incentive to end the war. They profit immensely off the war. They get to sort of steal all the aid and then sell it on the black market and then take all the sort of international donations, get funneled straight to them. So they're quite open. They enjoyed October 7th. It was great. And they're doing great off the war. So there's no incentive for the people negotiating on behalf of Hamas to end the war until a couple weeks ago when Israel bombed Qatar and then put the fear of God into the Hamas members internationally to do so. So the pressure is really coming from, I think, the thought that the Israelis might hunt them down to the end of the earth. And now their lives are on the line, just like the people of Gaza. So that might be moving things along. Also, Hamas has not agreed to the 20-point plan. They've agreed to maybe 6 or 7 of the 20 points and then obfuscated the rest. And then they're going into negotiations. So if they agreed on the point of plans, why are there talks now? But again, Trump likes declaring victory on peace deals. So more important than the peace deals seems to be declaring victory on peace deals for Donald Trump. So what will happen in these talks, we don't know. The Israelis are highly skeptical because the Gazans, Hamas, PIJ, the Arab League have never, ever kept their word on any deal they've ever made with the Israelis, ever. So they have a 100% track record of lying. And if you remember 2005, when the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, gave Gaza full autonomy, gave them elections, gave them resources, gave them everything, gave them water, gave them greenery, gave them whatever. They burned it all down, declared eternal holy war against the Jews, and then this is what led to October 7th. So you have the West that doesn't really understand the motivations of messianic Islamo-fascist terrorists. They don't care about food, they don't care about water, they don't care about the people of Gaza, they don't care about their own lives. They care about, world domination if you read their charter. So it comes down to, is you're going to get a lasting peace deal, or is this going to be sort of a Treaty of Versailles type situation where the Israelis are going to have to accept something where they can get the hostages back, and then we sort of go on a 10-year pause before Gaza has enough arms and tunnels to launch another attack on Israel, and then we're right back in the war in the 2030s. So that's what this is all about. I do hope that an actual peace deal can reach some equilibrium. What that would look like, we don't know, but it would need heavy U.S. backing of the Israelis to actually do something that would fundamentally end the forever war, which would be a couple kilometers of a buffer zone taken by the Israelis of Gaza. The only way that Hamas would learn the lesson of October 7th is if they lose land to Jews. That's the only thing in their mindset that would deter them. If there's no change of the border of Gaza, this is a total victory, and they're going to raise their kids to do this all over again.
As you've pointed out, Hamas has not agreed to the entire 20-point plan. Particularly, they've not agreed to disarm. I wanted to understand from you, in this context, what are the risks if a ceasefire is in place and Hamas retains even part of its stockpile, its weapons stockpile or tunnel infrastructure?
Well, the risk is incredibly high to first the Gazan people. Again, go back to 2005 when Israel gave full sovereignty to Gaza, and then they had an election and Hamas defeated the Palestinian Authority there. It was the most brutal and violent, bloody time in Palestinian history. More Palestinians, civilians, died from 2005 to 2007 than they did from 2023 to 2025, as Hamas conducted a brutal crackdown on dissent and really released a reign of terror. So a lot of the moderate Gazans are currently being protected by the Israeli military. I mean, you saw this after they thought there was a ceasefire. Hamas attacked one of the family clans that was sort of slipping out of their sphere of orbit, and the Israelis had to come in and defend the Gazan clans against Hamas, which then Hamas said was, a brutal assault by the Israelis, parroted by the international media and all that type of stuff. So the incredible risk that people aren't talking about is to the Gazan civilians right now. If there's a ceasefire and the Israeli offensive ceases on Hamas, and Hamas is able to move with free reign throughout the Strip, they will start killing political dissent. I mean, Greta talks about the live stream genocide. The top 10 most brutal videos coming out of Gaza that we have seen, if you look at them, are not from Israelis on Palestinians. They are from Hamas on Palestinians. I mean, you see videos of torture, them shooting people in the kneecaps, and then execution-style stuff. All the most brutal videos are Hamas versus Palestinian civilians or Palestinian dissidents. So the risk of stopping the Israeli offensive before Hamas is disarmed is that Hamas will then take the opportunity to kill more Gazan civilians, as they've been doing whenever they get the chance. In the previous ceasefires, this is what they did as well.
In fact, Trump's 20-point plan provides for the creation of an international board of peace to oversee post-war reconstruction. However, Hamas has remained mum on this so far and has only supported a future technocratic Palestinian leadership, which has also been outlined in this plan. In your assessment, is this then an attempt by Hamas to retain control behind the scenes while avoiding external oversight?
Yeah, 100%. If it's a Palestinian technocrat society, it's pretty easy for Hamas to take it over, right? You bribe or you kidnap someone's daughter or son, you do a couple executions, you torture someone, and then you're in charge of this committee. And then once the world's attention turns away in about 5 years, it's not Hamas, it's Shmamas. And it's, just a name change. And then you have Hamas again. So that's why they don't want any international oversight. They don't want anyone who has, sort of family or friends or bank accounts outside the Gaza Strip that they can't get at, because that's sort of their plan. I mean, you hit it there. That's quite obviously what they're trying to do is, allow a bunch of Palestinian technocrats to rule and then, hold a gun to their head behind the scenes if they're not disarmed. So this is why it's imperative that Hamas is disarmed and exiled from the Strip, and that Gaza loses territory because of the attack, because that's the only thing that will stick in the minds of Gazan civilians is October 7th led to loss of territory. Because if it's, October 7th, we didn't lose territory, we don't care about our own loss of life, we killed many Jews, it was very good, Harvard took our side, we have lots of Harvard students that are now jihadist sympathizers, we should do this again. So this is the calculus, and many in the West don't understand this. They want to pretend that an Israeli-Hamas peace deal is like a European peace deal between, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the British Empire, and that's not what's in play here.
All right, Mr. Daniel Boardman, with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World today. With that, viewers, it's a wrap on this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned for more.